me to process what are the best clips.
Yeah.
Because I'm just all my energy is like trying to like, what's the next question? How do how
Yeah.
to come in here and redirect it the right way? But one thing I want to emphasize what you just said because I feel like it goes against the grain of a lot of the like I think of a lot of what the weekends what you talked about the four pillars.
Yes.
It's like traditional, very like almost like a the patriarchy's not that bad, so it's
It's not.
traditional stuff is good, but
The
then
patriarchy's not that bad.
right
No.
right
It's the patriarchy is what's given us the luxury to sit around and bemoan the patriarchy.
right.
It's a ridiculous argument, and it's not even accurate to what the situation is.
But then what you were just talking about was like, but here's some like, but that doesn't mean like, child would be like a traditional like the take traditional all the way would be like and let's hit kids again, and you're saying
Right.
no
Yeah. You could beat your wife and your child with a rod the size of your thumb. That was the measuring. Yeah. The rule of thumb law.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
Yeah. The rule of thumb law was that you could get a twig or a branch the size of your thumb, and it was legal to beat your wife and your children with it. It was legal. It was called the rule of thumb law. That's where that phrase comes from. The rule of thumb is it comes from that actual law. I'm pretty sure that's a fact. Look it up, would you?
Jamie, look that up. That's
Yeah. Take Terrence, would you look that one up? Rule of thumb law. That's ignorant. I mean, it's stupid. The fact that we condone violence in any way, shape, or form from men or women or children or anybody, it's such an immature way of dealing with something. And really, isn't it, when you look at it, isn't the act, the anger or the rage that's being expressed from a state of a child? Somebody that's consumed by their feelings instead of their common sense, their values, it goes right to the other thing that I was talking about their own dignity. Like, how dignified is it for a 40-year-old man to strike a 2-year-old child, or a 38-year-old man to take a towel and snap a little girl in the ass with it under the guise of, I warned you? It's like, you warned her. You just violated the sanctity of her body because you're bigger and you're an adult and you warned her? No, you became a child, a teenager at best, acting out, propagating violence. And then all the other adults, well, he told her he was going to do it. Yeah, the guy should go to jail. He should get locked up and put in prison. Bottom line.
Yeah.
And no equivocation about that. Let me just state that clear, black and white. There is never an excuse for an adult to be violent with a child under any circumstances. It's not okay. It's not all right. It should not happen. It's an adult acting irresponsibility, not taking responsibility for the situation that's been created by the adult. There's no such thing as bad children. There's bad parents, bad adults. Children are just being children. And they're marvelous. They're wonderful. There's nothing better than being around small children or, children that are struggling. I got a 16-year-old son right now, and it's hysterically fun to watch him navigate life now because he's in that zone of, I know and you're stupid. Right? Which all young men go through. No, you can't tell me anything, Dad. I already know that. I know the answer to that one. And I usually just say, okay, well, I'll just let you find out. My job is to make sure that in his learning, he doesn't hurt himself too badly or anyone else at all. That's my job as a parent. Now, when he's outside of my purview, like meaning not my physical realm, can I control what he does? Hopefully, if I've instilled good values in the young man so that he has manners, that he treats young ladies with respect, that he's respectful towards adults, that, if he is confronted by people of authority, the police, whatever, the court system, doesn't matter who it is, school teachers, that he conducts himself, because what's important for me to teach my son isn't how people are treating him. It's about his character. It's about who he is and what he represents. Does that mean that he should be okay with people treating him badly? Absolutely not. He should say something to somebody and get that attention paid to it. Hopefully it's me, and I'll deal with it, as I have. But, we as adults, we abdicate responsibility and put all the onus on children. Like, they're supposed to understand, like, in 6th, 4th, 5th grade, 9, 10-year-olds, that we're going to teach them about sex education at 9 and 10. Like, really? They're not emotionally ready for that. They haven't even, most of them, discovered their sexual beings yet.
Well, I could go off on a tangent about that.
I know, me too.
But instead, let me ask.
It's ridiculous. It's ludicrous. There's better things to teach them. Like, why don't we start teaching them how to balance a checkbook? How to be productive members of society.
Yeah, I mean, education. Well, so one thing with education.
That education should come from their parents. In other words,
about sex
men
education.
should talk about things that are important to men the way men talk about things that are important. And is there anything more important for me as a father to teach my children about than their own dignity?
How is that different with a son versus a daughter?
Oh, it's very different. With the son, you're teaching him about not only his dignity, but how to carry himself in the world in a dignified manner, to treat other people with that dignity. I think the same is true with the daughter, but it's different with the daughter because women are so much smarter than men. A lot of this stuff, and I know I'm going to get, he's just going off on his tangent, but some of this stuff is more innate in women because women. Listen, I can't give an entire history lesson about why this is true, but it has to do with initiation. A woman is initiated by her body. It's just a part of the life cycle.
Womanhood is initiated by...
The demarcation is when a woman starts her menstrual. Mm-hmm. When a young girl becomes a young woman when her menstrual cycle starts. And I think that should be put back into its proper place in society and become something that is celebrated.
Understood.
Not just by her mother, but by men. And it should be treated in a way that is sacred, because it is sacred. We're talking about her ability to bring life into the world. Her body is, the same thing happens, I would say, with young men, but their body doesn't initiate them. And that's why for centuries, for millennia, we had processes, the men did, and the women, and the community, had a way to then teach and initiate young men. And everybody was in on it. It wasn't like the men just decided and took the young men away. No, everybody was part of it. The grandparents, the aunties, the uncles, the community. They all participated in the initiation process for young men. Now, as they did with the initiation process for young women, a woman's menstrual cycle used to be a sacred thing. They had special places that women were taken, and the women were pampered during this time. They were treated with dignity. They were treated with respect. Their body, that process of their body bringing forth the eggs of life. I mean, that's what they are. And it was treated with the reverence that it was necessary. It wasn't just take them to the CVS and buy them some tampons and then show them how to put the tampon in. Mm-hmm. That's what it's gotten to. And these young women struggle. I'm watching, she'll see this when she's older, but I'm watching my 11-year-old struggle with that conversation with me as her father, that because her mother and I are divorced and we live in separate homes. So when she comes to my house and she's on her menstrual cycle, I know it, not because she told me, but because there's evidence for me to see. And I struggle with, how do I talk to her about this and be dignified in the conversation so that I don't injure her or give her the wrong message, like you did something wrong because there's now a stain on your bed. So I've slowly and her mother did a great thing when she began her menstrual cycle. They gathered women together and they had a special night to celebrate that and to treat it with, I think, the dignity and respect. We don't have that for men. How do we do that for men? We do it very differently, right? It's not the same for men and women. I mean, how we initiate young men and how we initiate young women is very different. It shouldn't be the same. It's not equal. It's very different. But just as and this is my thing, just as women are life givers, life bringers, no, women are life bringers. They bring life into the world. Men are life givers. They give their seed to the woman to bring life into the world. Why is that not celebrated? Why is that not dignified? Why is that not, taught to young men that to be responsible around that behavior? Because it has that importance. It has literally life and death consequences.
Huh. I mean, that makes me think of like a lot of what we talk about around relationships.
No, it's a whole.
A lot of it's around Yeah. It is a sex education discussion, and I guess
it's certainly part of it.
Schools mangle it.
My point
badly.
is that we're not talking about sex in the right. We're not just talking about sex. We're talking about intimacy between a man and a woman, and it's not talked about with any kind today. And traditionally, I don't know because I haven't hung out with a lot of women talking about sex.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say that. Yeah. I haven't heard a lot of women speak about sex.
Yeah.
So anything that I would say about that would just be made up.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've heard a lot of men talk about it. But the most profound thing that I ever heard a man say, and it was profound to me, we were around doing what men do, bullshitting, and men were being very cavalier in their discussion about sex with women and their wives. But this one man said something, and I'll never forget what he said. And he said, I don't talk about having sex with my wife because I revere my wife. And it wouldn't be appropriate to talk about her that way in front of other men. And I was like, wow, it was a revolutionary thought. I'd never heard anybody say that. But I thought about it, and I thought, wow, that's fucking noble. That's honorable. That's like dignified. Isn't that how every woman would want her man to talk about her? I don't talk about making love with you with other people, sweetheart, because that's between you and I. That's something that's sacred. It's precious. It should be treated that way. And it also takes a long time to develop. In the beginning of a marriage, sex is not what it is 20 years into a marriage. But sex can take on a sacredness and a spirituality, if you want, between two people over time that can never happen in 5 years. It doesn't happen there's no such thing as love at first sight. I think that after 50 years, you can reflect back, oh, I was in love with her from the first time I saw her. Really? Well, tell me about that last fight you had there, George. When you were saying about how you hated her and what you used colorful words to describe her. You weren't talking about like it was love at first sight. So I've said a lot about that, but that's what I believe. And I believe that based on not only my experience, I've gotten to that part in a relationship where I did not want to be with the person that I was married to. I couldn't stand them. And I got to the other side of it to where I saw what love was. We didn't make it. It didn't survive. But I saw the potential of what was possible on the other side of that. I can't stand you. And it's sacred space. That's the only way I can describe it. It is a sacred space that a man and a woman can occupy that is so fulfilling. It's beyond comprehension. It's beyond words. It's a sacredness. And you see old couples. You see them. The way he touches her hand, it's different. The way that they look at each other is different. It may not be the way they talk to one another, but you see it in small glimpses in the way that they touch and they're affectionate. Or, this whole concept of like happily ever after is such bullshit. It's not happily ever after. It's happily ever after 50 years. That's when it's happily ever after. When you get to the end of the rainbow and you're sitting there in your rocking chairs and you're looking at, Jesus, look what we did, Shirley. My God, isn't it amazing that we made it? And look at these children, how great they're doing. And look at these grandchildren. And look at the life and look at what we contributed to our community, to our church, to our, community through, volunteering at the YWCA or whatever it is volunteering people take. There's no bad volunteering unless you're volunteering for like making bombs and blowing shit up and killing people. That's stupid. Why would you do that to other people? Why? Because they got a different viewpoint than you do? You want to know something? I'm going to say this.
I got. Go ahead.
Here's another thing that I think it's profound. You know how to get people to stop cheating on their spouses?
No.
Single people stop sleeping with them. You want to know how to get men to quit cheating on their wives? Women stop sleeping with married men. There's always going to be the slick operator that lied and covered it up, but I would venture to say
most times the single person knows.
She knew, and she didn't care. She didn't care enough about herself. She didn't care enough about the other woman. She didn't care enough about the sanctity of marriage to say, you know what, I'm not going to be self-indulgent right now just to have a good time.
A lot of good stuff there. The part about like marriage getting up to the point,
yes,
and then seeing you got close.
Yes,
you got to I hate this person, and then
yes,
we saw beyond it.
Yes,
and that happened during a lot of that happened like around the time of COVID, I think.
Yes, I actually had a prophetic statement that I said in 2020, in March or April of 2020. I wonder how many people are going to get divorced because of COVID. Unbeknownst to me, I was one of the statistics. My marriage ended at the beginning of COVID, June of 2020.
So
that was when my wife said that she wanted a divorce. The truth of it is that the problems in my marriage were there long before 2020 and COVID. It was the proximity to each other during that time that made it impossible to ignore anymore. And on her perspective, so intolerable that she didn't want to be in the situation anymore. She wanted out.
So
I saw it very differently. I saw it as an opportunity to make it to the other side, to work it out.
And then around that, like that's also so COVID. I was going to ask you about COVID in general, like just how that impacted people. So you anticipated it would impact relationships.
I said it,
and
the truth of it is it did.
And
I don't know what the statistical rate for divorce was between 2020 and 2022, but I'll tell you what, I bet it skyrocketed. I bet it went through the roof.
What else did you think COVID did in our like?
Well, a lot of bad things, but I think that the isolation aspect of it was probably the most horrific aspect of it. That people were so alienated from each other and so afraid, and were being terrorized by mass media for ratings. When I don't think we'll ever get to the truth. Now, that's not to say, listen, man, millions of people died. You might want to argue about what they died of, but there's a whole bunch of people that died of COVID. So to me, like anyone that died of it, it's sad, it's tragic, it's terrible. And some of it was preventable. If we would have had the right information coming from sensible people using common sense stuff in the very beginning, it would have been dealt with as opposed to being sloughed off like it didn't exist. We pretended there was no such thing, even though people were dropping like flies in Italy, in China, in different parts of the country, until it actually started happening here in the United States. Primarily, it happened, the majority of the deaths came in New York.
But so, okay, yeah.
I think, I'm not certain of that, but I think a lot of people, I know a lot of people in New York died. Now,
Right,
you want to say they were loading up trailers full of dead bodies just for show? Really?
Right. So it's not a conspiracy, but some of those measures that were taken to
Well, I don't know
counteract.
whether it is or it isn't.
Okay. Right. Right. Okay.
I don't have any idea what the origins of COVID were.
Right. Right.
I don't.
Gosh, I figure
That's
what,
not
what
my
a big
thing.
what a big complex
I just know it
issue.
happened.
Yeah. Yeah. But
At this point, who gives a shit? What are we going to do about it? It's what's important.
yeah. And what are we gonna do? Well, so
I just listen. Less than maybe a little over a year ago, I had a friend die from it. Complications of COVID. It killed him.
yeah.
It killed him.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no mistaking it. That's what killed him.
Yeah. And I don't. Yeah. And I guess it's such a whole interconnected bunch of issues, like just the word COVID brings up, right? Like,
Yeah.
because I was thinking about
Because
first
people
what you were
want to.
talking about, which is like the isolation, the other stuff. But that's
People
like
want to
impact of-
dramatize it, but it's like any other sexy topic that people can have an opinion about. But what gets dismissed and overlooked is the suffering, man. They don't want to talk about the pain and the suffering of watching, not being able to go into a hospital and having a family member die. People don't want to talk about the suffering that caused. And not just people with COVID, anybody that was in the hospital that was ill, that was fatally ill, died alone. And you're talking about, what was the impact on the doctors and the nurses watching these people suffer, man? Watching them day after day cling on to life and just, would have given anything for the glimpse of their husband or their wife that maybe they hated before they got sick and wanted a divorce from. I'm telling you, in those moments, they were probably calling out for them. And those nurses had to hold those hands. And those doctors had to hold those hands and listen to them cry out if they could speak. So, that's the thing that I think, again, that men are not talking about things that are important to men the way men talk about things. Those are the kind of things that we don't talk about. It's sexy to talk about, it's a conspiracy and it's the chemtrails in the ceiling and because that's all, blah, blah, blah. And there's no, but we don't want to talk about the pain of COVID and the true cost of COVID, what it did to us, to our senses, how it drove us apart from each other. And don't tell me that there's not a wholesale, you want to talk about a conspiracy. It's not even a conspiracy. People have been being led slowly but surely to a certain spot, and they want everybody in their place. I don't know who they are, but I'm just telling you. And that place is in their home, watching their TV, on their iPads, on their cell phones. It's even now, it's not even just that won't go out. It's that even in your home, you're alone. Even in your home. The kids are in their bedrooms on YouTube. The parents are on the couch on Facebook, or granddad's checked out on the TV. That we've lost our sense of community. We've lost even the sanctity of the dinner table.
Right. Absolutely.
How meaningful that is to us as humans to just take an hour to an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours if we're lucky, and sit down and break bread with each other and talk about things that are important to us. That's where it used to get discussed. That's where all the major decisions were made. We're at the dinner table.
All these examples of suffering coming together
Yes.
in 2020, 2021.
Yes.
You're getting divorced.
Exacerbates.
And the Man to Man weekend
Yes.
is born in that context, yes?
Man to Man was born long before that. I'd been doing my due diligence to learn and spending a lot of time learning about being with men and the things that were going on with men. And when COVID happened, it created that isolation for men that I intrinsically knew was going to be bad. And at some point, I woke up one morning and called my friend and I said, it's time. And he says, time for what? I said, it's time that we do something. And we committed to do that weekend, that morning on the phone. And from that, we did our first weekend in June of 2020, 2021
Yeah, yeah,
in the middle of the COVID stuff.
yeah.
Even though people were saying, well, mass gatherings, and we did it in anyway. As far as I know, nobody from that first weekend, there was no mass outbreak of COVID at the weekend.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that no one, didn't get sick or didn't come down with COVID afterward. I'm just telling you, as the facilitator and who stayed in touch with a lot of the men that did that weekend, nobody called up and said, oh, I got COVID at the weekend. I didn't get it. My son didn't get it.
Yeah.
The other facilitator didn't get it. The 12 men that volunteered on production didn't get it.
And there were...
we wore masks, washed our hands regularly. We took precautions.
Yeah, there were men with vaccines, and they had there's a little sticker that went on our name tags if we had a
because
vaccine.
of the site. At that time, the site that we were at required vaccination for mass gatherings, and so we did have to ask men to be vaccinated and to bring their vaccinations. And as far as we know, every man that participated was vaccinated. But we also, the production team wore masks. We wore masks. I don't know if I actually wore one, but I know that they were available for anyone that wanted it. I don't know that the site required it inside, and we have outside activities too. So
I remember we would mask up every time we got food from the cafeteria out of respect for the
that's right
employees that worked there.
Very good. The respect for the people that were working there. Out of respect for those people, we put on the mask. We didn't make a big deal. We didn't feel like we were being controlled by the government telling us. We did it out of respect.
But I guess we're also going with that.
Is that such a foreign concept?
Yeah, that's weird.
I'm just asking for a friend.
Respect, yeah.
Does that not does anybody not hear that and go, oh, well, what a nice thing for those men to do? Yeah. And nobody complained. And nobody said, I have my right to not wear a mask. Fuck you. No, we did it out of respect for the other human beings that were there that asked us to do that, because and also out of respect for the laws. The law was that indoors, in those conditions, it was mandatory that we did it. It didn't cost us anything. What did we sacrifice? Our personal right to what? To what? Kiss my ass. I almost said something I shouldn't really say, but
well, yeah, it's the mask thing was like a big divisive. It made it hard for people to live together, I think, or like it was a thing that like
it exacerbated what was already happening.
Yeah.
And again, we're not talking about this. We're buying 11 and 12-year-old cell phones. We're giving them iPads. We're buying them PS4s, and we're giving them to them without distraction, with no limitations. Here, just go to your room. Here, go play on your phone.
Yeah.
Here, go play on your iPad. We're abdicating our responsibility. Not everyone, and this is probably the low percentage, but I'm saying on any percentage, it's not good parenting.
Yeah.
Do you have a bedtime when you were a kid?
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
What was your bedtime?
Shoot, I remember being 9 at one point.
Yeah, mine was 9 o'clock till I was 18.
Yeah.
Well, I moved out when I was 16, so that's not true. But up until then, it was 9 o'clock. And there was no conversation. It wasn't, when I got to be 13, 14, they extended it till 10. No, it was 9 o'clock. It was my time for my dad to watch his TV by himself. And my mother to go to her room and watch her TV and to take the break from each other and from the family and respite. And and then it was time to go in and have imagination time while I was laying there trying to go to bed, which is very good for children to use their imagination and pretend things in their room alone by themselves.
Imagination time.
Yeah, my God. No, we shouldn't let children have imaginations anymore. Give them an iPad.
Yeah, because they can come up with some dangerous stuff if they, yeah.
I think it's like throwing them to the fucking wolves, to tell you the truth. I think it's goddamn throwing children to the wolves if it's not monitored, if there aren't restrictions on it. On my daughter's phone, there's restrictions. Anything that she downloads, I see. Anybody that she chats with, I see. What she's talking about, I know. It's not unmonitored. Now, so I'm not saying that monitored and with limitation that it's not okay. Of course, anything with moderation is not a bad thing. Anything in moderation, unless it's like violence against people. That moderation is still not a good thing. But isn't that just common sense? Can't we ever get back to a space where, just right is right and wrong is wrong? Is it really that hard to differentiate anymore? Is you telling me that people really don't know what's right and what's wrong anymore? We need a government to legislate what's right and wrong? What's the correct speech? What's the correct pronouns to use when you're addressing a human being? How about hello? Nice to meet you. How lovely it is to see you today. Who gives a shit whether you call me a man or a woman? Treat me with dignity and respect because I'm a human being.
Same thing with race. A lot of the race stuff is mostly like, it's not so much, you're right now the focus is, they killed a black person killed a white person killed a black person, but it's not, who cares which race they were. Murder is wrong. You know what I mean?
It's not that simple because because it's, and again, that's the end result.
Right.
That's not the problem. Yes, that's a problem, but that's not what caused the problem. So there's a much deeper conversation, and I'll say specific to, to certain. Listen, here's the deal. This is my belief. If you want to learn about the impact of racism on a race, you have to go and listen. It's not about having a conversation. It's not about me going and having an opinion about what you're saying to me. It's about me going and listening to you and learning from you what you're going through. I'll give you an example. I was married to a Latina for a long time. And one day I was watching something and I realized, like, oh, that's my wife. What the situation was that about how, Latina women are treated. And it dawned on me, like, oh, my wife experiences this every day when she leaves the home. People looking at her a certain way because of the color of her skin, not the content of her character, not who she was as a person, but simply that she had dark skin. And that she's treated a certain way because she has dark skin, having nothing to do with who she is as a person. That's and I said it to her. I said, I never ever considered how hard that must be for you every day. And she just looked at me and tears welled in her eyes. She said, I can't believe that you said that to me. I get emotional thinking about it now because the truth of it was that's how ignorant I was. Now, however you want to classify that, white privilege, whatever, racist tendencies, people are taught, not just white people, but all people are really taught to be racist every day in our culture. We're not taught not how to be one. We're taught how to be one. We're not taught how to see another person as a human being. We're taught how to see people as, Irish American, Italian American, Polish American. I know I'm not saying the other ones because I'm saying it on purpose that way. Because it doesn't really matter, does it? They're human beings. They should be treated with dignity and respect. But that's got to start with me. Irregardless of how you respond or react to me. Or what your justification for why I'm a, honky cracker piece of shit. If I act like that, I'm probably going to get treated that way. What I have always found, and I lived in different communities during my life, if I treat someone with dignity and respect, I usually get that reciprocated back to me. If I want to learn about someone's culture, the best way is to go and shut up and just sit and watch. That's how you get educated, don't you? Isn't that how you learn? By watching? That's how men learn. They learn by watching and doing, not by talking. So if you want to learn about what it's like to, and I don't even, learn's probably not a good word, but to get a perspective, because The only way to learn it is to be it. And I'll never know what it is to be a black man in America. I'll never know that, no matter how many black men tell me what it's like. I'll never know it. But I can listen and I can learn that that's their life and that's what they're going through. And I can have a measure of respect for what they have to deal with. And I can certainly be a person that doesn't, hopefully, conduct myself in a way that doesn't treat that every person in my life with dignity and respect. Because that's what I want. You know, it's the treat people like you want to be treated. Well, it goes both ways. And I think, by and large, most people do.
Yeah. What have you learned from each of your kids?
Oh, that's a whole different podcast.
Could be.
Yeah. Oh, you're just trying to get me to break down crying, aren't you? I know, and they say men aren't emotional, which is total bullshit. And men aren't sensitive. It's more total bullshit. Many things. Many things. My daughters, I'll classify it in my daughters and my sons. My daughters teach me about some of the stuff that I've been talking about dignity, about virtue, about being in the presence of that feminine spirit, right? And how to relate to it, and how smart and clever and tenacious and how formidable women are. You know, women are very formidable creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a reverence for women because of the knowledge and knowing that women, when they want to do damage, will inflict such viciousness on their intended target that you will wish I'd rather be in a fist fight with a man. And they will cut you in ways that you didn't even think were possible. Provoked. I'm not talking about just out of their nature. It's not their nature.
Mm-hmm.
Their nature is not to be that way. But provoked, you really don't want to mess with them. They will make it clear that they've been there and they've made their mark on you. So, not my daughters haven't taught me that, but I have a respect for my daughters in that way that, you know, my older daughter.
They're formidable.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah. Yes. Let's not pretend they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They can be dainty and they can be very, you know, soft and it's wonderful when they're that way. But provoked, they will, yes. Yep. My sons, oh, I forgot. You're asking me the second part of the question. My sons teach me about the fun of life. And to always remember how important it is to include fun in every aspect of what you do. No matter whether that's work, prayer, relationships, to always enjoy, because I think that that's intrinsically kind of men's territory. Men are very love to have fun and be enjoyable. And I think the vast majority of men are very, you know, they like a good time. They teach me about tenacity and perseverance and the ethic of hard work and the benefit of working hard. All my sons have really good work ethics. Like, they know the value of $1. And they're charming, you know. But fun. If you wanted to know, the biggest thing that both my children teach me is to remember what it's like to have fun, and just for the sake of having fun.
Six kids?
Yes.
Okay.
2 grandchildren.
Anything specific to this guy here?
To my
Put him on camera here.
yes. So this young man is 24 years old, and what does he teach me? He teaches me a lot of what I just said, about fun, but he also teaches me to wake up every day and appreciate the day. That just the fact of waking up is should be such a joyous celebration. He's always in celebration of just the day, the moment, and reminds me that how precious things are, and how good it is to be told, "I love you, I care about you, you're special," because he knows how to treat people in a way that always makes them feel special. And also, don't cross him up because he will show you a side of himself you don't want to see. But you want to ask me what love is? That's love. That human being to me exemplifies that word, love. Because more than anybody I've ever met, he lives his life in a loving way.
I feel like in a way he almost is a big part of what differentiates the Man-to-Man weekend from the Sterling weekend. Just his presence. I mean, is that possible?
He seems to have touched into what we have no way of explaining, but he will say, do, act, be in specific moments to bring attention to something that if he wasn't there, we wouldn't have noticed. That actually, we were talking about the Heoki spirit, the trickster. And, when you say that word, the trickster, people think of being tricked, but really, in the way that we view it, and how I view that word and that presence, or that for me is a spirit, is that it's not about they're trying to trick me. They're trying to get at me to pay attention to something. They're trying to bring my attention to the moment, to not miss what's happening right in front of me, what's real, what's present, what's not a trick, but what's the reality of the situation. So I just view the word in the Heoki spirit as one that's very important to me that he embodies, which is, that they're bringing attention to the moment of something profound, something important that is happening, and they just want everybody to pay attention to it. And the best way to be with that spirit is to allow it to be, to not try and stop it, to not say, "Oh, be quiet." Actually, just to be with whatever it is, because it's not about what he's saying. It's more about like what's going on in the moment. And that didn't start at the Man-to-Man weekend. There's been people that have for years have come and spent time with him purely because of who he is and how the things that he brings to them. And he is a profound. He's definitely a profound spirit. We like to say that he's got the direct link. There's no difference. There's nothing interrupting his flow of the spirit. However you view that, whether you call it God, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, whatever, he seems to have a direct connection. And I think many people that have his ability are also that way. They're just not viewed that way. It's easy to dismiss it. Oh, that didn't really happen. No, it really happens a lot with him. And he knows right from wrong. And he knows what bullshit is, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do. And do you say what you need to say when you need to say it?
Hey, Dad.
No, do you say what you need to say when you need to say it?
Thank you, man.
All right.
Yeah. Right on. Well, I think maybe that's a good place. That might be a good place to stop.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for sitting down and talking about some of this stuff. Man, it's always a pleasure.
Well, I wish you well in your endeavor, and I appreciate your sacrifice and your generosity to come and spend this time and to do this interview. And I hope that it's been meaningful for you, and I hope that it benefits your life as I do. I hope it benefits the people that are in your life.
Yeah, I hope it helps me show them a little bit about what is this weekend that I keep telling them about.
Oh, man2men.org. It's men-to-men.org. If you put in man to man, you will not find our website, and you may be very surprised at what you see. but man to men. Men, men, dash 2, T-O, dash men.org is our website. And there's more information about the weekend there and how to register and the cost and where it's at and when the next one is.
Yeah, I don't have a YouTube channel yet, but maybe by the time you watch this, I do, in which case you should like and subscribe.
Yes, like and subscribe.
Thank you.
Like and subscribe. Please.